Hello, this is Kelley Baker, otherwise known as the Angry Filmmaker, and you are listening to the Movie Raid Show.
It's time for the Movie Raid, and tonight's victim is author and filmmaker Kelley Baker, known as the Angry Filmmaker. Hello.
Hello there.
What have we been up to? I know you've quite a bit of books that you've written over the course of the months. Do we have anything new works that you would like to promote, anything that we can check out right now? Or
I always freelance because, a guy's got to eat. My books and my films are available for streaming, but they're all up at my website, angryfilmmaker.com. I think there's 2 filmmaking books, the story of my dog and I out on the road on tour for all those years, and then a couple of collections of short stories. And of course, I'm working on more short stories. I hope to have 2 more books out in the next 8 months or so, and I've got another one of my own films that I'm working on.
How would you define priority and responsibility with today's indie filmmaking?
Personally, for me, priority, I try to write at least an hour every morning before I get started doing film stuff. And whether I'm writing a screenplay or a book or short stories or whatever, I want that hour and a half in the morning to just be my quiet time and to create, and then I can go on from there and I will edit, I'll sound design, I will work on other people's work or my own stuff. But as an artist and somebody who's been doing it for a long time, I really find that first hour and a half in the morning, which is me time, is really, really important. And if that goes well, my day is going to go well. As much as being a one-man band, I still rely on others. I still collaborate with people all over the place too, but I find anymore that I'm the one who needs to set stuff up because they're my projects. So I'm setting things up. I'm getting the people together that I'm going to need for various things, and trying to give them enough lead time so that we can all do our best.
And there's always competition between indie filmmakers within each other, not just between companies and in themselves. Do you think that an indie filmmaker not just focus on the craft, but also needs to be self-aware of other artists' work, actions, and so they don't make any future mistakes, or let alone confliction getting their goals out there as well as their focus?
I think that when I was younger, I definitely felt that way, and I definitely looked at a lot of other work and knew so many other artists and filmmakers and was active, with all sorts of groups. As I've gotten older, I'm real blunt about this. I'm 66 years old. I've had 2 open heart surgeries, and I've got a couple of other things going on. I am concentrating more on my work and my stuff and less on stuff for other people because the path in front of me is a lot shorter than it used to be. I have a bunch of things that I still want to do. There's no excuses. Let's make time to do these things. I've still got so many great friends in the business and everything, but I see less and less of their work, probably because I'm becoming more of a hermit and more focused on the things that I'm trying to do. I'm hoping I've got another good 20, 25 years left in me. That's the plan. That's the goal. I've got different priorities now than when I was younger. And like I said, I agree with you wholeheartedly. When I was younger, I think I was a whole lot more aware. Sometimes worry that I'm not as aware as I used to be.
And the unfortunate thing is, indie filmmakers are usually worried about, who's going to say, smack about whoever, and it's almost endless. It happens, but you're losing your focus because you're wondering who's talking about that. And especially if you work with somebody that you don't agree with,
right,
whatever vision that you're working with, it becomes a confliction. Therefore, you're losing your focus of what you want to do. Therefore, you're restricting yourself and you're being distracted. There's all these distractions with other filmmakers that they don't like their work or they don't like working with them and so forth. Well, that's okay because you don't really need to continue to tolerate. Just walk away, go do your own thing. And I've seen such hatred, and there shouldn't be a hatred between anybody. It's okay, there's bad people out there. We got it. You're upset about it. You don't want to be like that. But at the same time, you two are an indie filmmaker. You two is an artist. You don't need to compare yourself to them. They don't need to compare themselves to you. You don't need to compare what kind of work you do compared to the kind of work they do, let alone if it's the same genre or technique.
I got a lesson early on. I just made my first feature, Birddog, and we had a rough cut screening, and it happened originally before that. It was a short film I made, and I was at the lab looking to print, and there was another filmmaker in town, and we'd been friends forever. And he's like, "Hey man, what are you doing?" So I saw him about to look at a first answer print on one of my films, and he said, "Oh, do you mind if I sit in?" It's like, "No, come on in." So, they screened the film, and I'm going to tell you, he just ripped me a new one. there's all these problems with this film, this doesn't work, and he's just going on and on and on. And I'm in that moment. It was my third short film, and I was in that moment where I was really vulnerable, and I walked out of that screening thinking I had just made the biggest piece of crap ever, and what was I even doing? And I was really upset, and I went home and I was thinking about it and thinking about his critiques and on and on and on, and all of a sudden it dawned on me all the stuff that he hated about my film, and I think hate was the word, and all his suggestions would have made it just like his work. And I went, wait a minute, he and I do totally different kinds of films. I still like him, I still respect him, but I went back and I did not make any changes on that film. It was my most successful short film ever, and that was Stolen Toyota. But he watched a rough cut, and I can't remember who invited him because I didn't, but he watched a rough cut of my feature, and a couple of days later, I'm in this little restaurant by my studio, and he comes walking in, and so he sits down, and I'm there with another friend of mine, and he said, well, I saw your film, and I'm sure you want my feedback. And I said, yeah, okay, whatever. And he ripped me again. And I just kind of sat there going, yeah. And when he finally left and my friend and I were walking back to my studio, she was just like, oh my God, the horrible things he said. And I just looked around and I said, did he? I wasn't listening because I already know where he stands. Anything he was saying really had more to do with him than with my work. And like I said, he's an incredibly successful filmmaker. I still love his work. But we find on this journey that we're on that there are some people you don't need to listen to. You can like their work, you respect their work, and even like them as human beings, but their critique is not necessarily going to help you. I'm very particular about critiques anymore that I listen to, because I will listen to things from people that I certainly respect and who have paid their dues. But there are some people, and you use the word hatred, which is absolutely right, and I don't get that. In my world, in my mind, there's enough stuff for everybody. We should be supporting each other. Whether we make similar films or not, we're all in this together. And when I meet up with other filmmakers who don't feel that way, I kind of check out. It's like, good luck to you. I will probably still watch their work, maybe not. But I don't have time for hatred or competition or, we're all different. We all create different stuff. I mean, Van Gogh saying bad things about Picasso or whatever behind his back, and I know they didn't even know each other. But why do some people feel like they have to tear down other artists? I don't understand that, and I really have no tolerance for it or no time for it.
And in some cases, it might even be themselves. Like I don't want to say jealousy, because I really don't see that entirely as the main reason, because that's very loosely. They don't like something about themselves of how they do with their own films, but they're looking at all these other techniques, and they're inflicting what they feel toward other filmmakers, and that's what makes you a bad filmmaker, in my opinion, because you're putting all these other emotions that is not indirect with the person that caused them to you. Something of your own. Channel your own energy into something that you want to create. You cannot allow other people outside of your circle to interject with that, because you yourself are going to eventually see as you being the monster, and then what you're claiming to what other people are doing.
Right. Well, the other thing with that stuff is I think any creative person also has those moments where we're questioning, oh my God, am I doing this right? As a writer, as a filmmaker, all of this stuff. A few moments where you're really, really vulnerable. Questioning if everything you're doing is right or good or on a particular project, whatever it might be. And to have someone come in and just start slashing and burning. And you have to realize, and I talked to a couple of people in the past about this too, is if someone doesn't like my work, I'm cool with that. That's fine. I'm not for everybody. No filmmaker, no artist is for everybody. Doesn't mean that I'm a bad guy or I'm a horrible person. Someone did not like something I created. Oh well, I move forward. Now, granted, there are people who will have a valid opinion, and I like to feel that I can still filter the crap out and get those valid thoughts just in case, because I do believe that it helps us become better at what we do, but we get to pick and choose what we listen to from others. And a lot of it has to do with attitude. I mean, when I'm asked to critique other people's work, my method is really, really simple. I ask questions. I don't say, well, this sucked, this didn't work. I will look at somebody and say, I had problems with that scene in the cemetery. What were you thinking about there? Because the goal is to get them to talk about what they were going for and get them to see where the problem might be. It's not for me to tell you what the problem is. It's for me to help guide you so that you see what the problem is. And it may not be a problem to you. It may be a problem only to me. But at that point, you want to have your guards down when you're having a discussion like that. And like I said, I've got some friends of mine who I do value what they say about my work, and I do really, really listen. But then at the end of the day, for all of us, it's whether I choose to take that advice or those thoughts, that's up to me. If someone's going to get pissed off because I didn't take their advice, well, that's on them. That's not on me.
Absolutely. And there's a huge difference between listening and hearing. Because you can listen all day long, man. You can listen all day long, hear opinions, critiques, everything. But when you hear, you got to hear yourself. What are you hearing about yourself? You've already heard what they had to say. What are you hearing about yourself and how you think about the things? And if you're transgression into all this other stuff, you're simply just missing the point to yourself. Again, you're pointing the gun at yourself if you're allowing it to happen. You're pulling the trigger yourself, and it's not their fault. You're actually encouraging it to happen because you allowed it to happen.
Right. That's something I totally agree with. I think as artists we have to be strong enough and hang on to our vision enough so that the critiques, the slings and arrows, what have you, come flying at you, and it's like, I don't agree with this. These are the things that I wanted to do. And if you are reacting however you're reacting, then somehow, if you hate the work, then good, I got a response from you. If you love the work, better, but I still got that same response. If you were just kind of oh yeah, that thing was nice, but it's totally forgettable. Well, now I got a problem because I don't want anything I do to be totally forgettable, right? I want to either piss you off or make you love it. Now, does this kind of stuff keep me up at night? No. But when you're listening to people, and like I say, I know the people, especially now, who are saying the things that I need to hear for the right reasons. And man, if you have a group of people like that, you're very lucky. And I tell people, look for that. Don't look for people who necessarily love you and love your work. Look for people who are going to be honest with you, but in a way that's not going to totally freak you out and wreck you.
Do you feel like this whole divide and conquer method within the film community becomes more of tools of misguidance than assurance in the creative thinking?
Oh, absolutely. With some of the feature films that I did the sound design on, I can remember sitting in screenings with studio executives, and they would always have notes, and they'd be saying these things, and in my head it'd be like, what the hell movie did you just watch? That's not what we just projected. So many people feel like they have to have an opinion. People who are especially uncreative need to push their opinion, and if they're in the position of power, they need you to make changes just so that they can say, oh yeah, I talked to the filmmaker and he had to make these changes and I told him that and he did. Stuff can go too far. There's a lot of divide and conquer. A buddy of mine had a feature film on Amazon. It was a really nice film. It was a very quiet film about two people, and I loved it. And someone wrote a really, really scathing review of his movie, which is their prerogative, except for the very first sentence in their review was, well, I haven't seen this film yet, but it looks like it has, and then they proceed to tear through it. If you haven't seen someone's work, you got no business commenting on it, especially to tear it apart. And he was trying to get Amazon to take that thing down. It's not that it was a negative review. It's in the first sentence, they're saying they didn't see it. Why should that be up there? And of course, Amazon didn't do anything about it because they are a soulless company. Did I say that? But too many people want to critique stuff, and I say this, with the utmost love, sarcastically, just because people watch the behind the scenes stuff on DVDs or whatever, it doesn't mean you know how to do it. I've seen lots of doctor shows where they operate, and there's no way I can take someone's appendix out. I come back to this whole thing. Anybody who's creative, what we do, be it writing, be it filmmaking, be it sound design, special effects, whatever it is, what we do is really, really hard. It takes certain amount of skill and expertise and knowledge to do the things that we do. So why are so many people who don't do these things, why do they think that their opinion is so important? You know what I'm saying? In this society now, everybody's on two sides on every issue. It doesn't matter. I like cats. You like cats? Cats are horrid. There's always we used to call it playing devil's advocate, but there's so much of that tearing each other apart that I think is just totally unnecessary. If I don't like someone's film, I don't say it unless that filmmaker, who is someone I know, asks me. And I'll say, you know what, it wasn't for me. And that's the extent of what I might say.
When an artist gets past all of this and is in a good place, a good headspace, and is moving forward with his career or her career, do you feel that with some of these indie companies that do pick them up, that, you know, supposedly earn their trust and so forth, do you think they intentionally divide groups of artists they associate with to gain a bigger advantage?
That's a hard question, and it's an interesting question. I think there are some that do. One of the things, when I was starting out, and I'm going to try to relate this to something we can all identify with, which is high school. When I was starting out, a lot of people wouldn't give me the time of day, especially established people. And I don't know whether it was because I was competition, I was up and coming, I wasn't part of the old guard. You know, it was both male and female things all the time, but I used to go to these conferences and seminars and go to New York, all these places, and I made some really great friends, but there was always this group of people that you would eventually find out, God, how do I put this nicely? They were trust fund babies. And for the most part, they hadn't done a lot of stuff, but they were not going to let anybody into their group. You know, I saw a lot of really talented people get burned out by that and just walk away. And, you know, luckily enough for me, I'm Scottish, I'm stubborn as all get out. But it was also, this is what I wanted to do with my life for as long as I could remember. And these people were not going to talk me out of it. But it was like, some of these places were like the cliques in high school, where you'd sit down at a table with people you didn't know and you realized they had no interest in you. And so I think a lot of that divide and conquer helped people like that and helped those people maybe feel good about themselves. And I think that anybody who did become successful, who was shunned by those people at first, suddenly became their new best friend. You would see people's opinions turn like crazy if someone had some success. With people I know and with the people that I see, I want them all to have success. And like I say, people setting up barriers for you. And yes, I think some distribution companies and some in the business do that on purpose. They do the divide and conquer. For what reason, I'm still not sure. Maybe they think they'll be easier to negotiate with you if you feel like they're coming from a position of strength. The unfortunate part with most films that are in distribution, especially films by independent filmmakers, we're the last ones to get paid. We never make a lot on our work. It's why I self-distribute, because I always tell people I may not make a lot of money, but it all comes directly to me. And I'm not having to give away 80% to some organization who was not with me late at night, you know, sweating bullets on the set. But I think with a lot of the divide and conquer, it's maybe also to get our work cheaper. You know, the film business is many things, but never ever forget it is still a business. And there are always people out there in any industry, in any business, who want to take advantage of you, which I always hate saying, but it's always my first lecture to students. You're going to get out there and somebody is going to screw you over. I got screwed over by my first job out of school by one of my professors and another student that I knew. They totally hosed me. And I walked away from that experience saying, okay, I know these guys, and they just screwed me over. What does that say about the rest of the business? For me, it was a good beginning part of my education. It made me a lot more wary of the people that I would do business with and that I will do business with. If you're working for somebody else on their film or whatever, like I said, when I used to do all the sound design, I would be told, you know, no, I want it done this way. And as many times as you want to say that's not the best way, you got one shot at saying, well, you know, this might be better. And if they say, no, I want this way, it's a work for hire and you do it. And, you know, one of the things I used to write about, because people would always say, you know, you work on these big movies and then you make your own movies. What's the difference? And I would always say, when I'm working for somebody else, I can be in the recording studio, the mix studio, wherever it is, and if I do something really, really cool, or something that I really like and I'm really excited about because it's going to make what I think that scene or whatever is better, I have to turn around and say, is that okay? Do you like that? Does that work for you? To whoever's sitting behind me. When I'm making my own films, I never have to turn around. That's the big difference in all of this stuff. Why I like working on my own stuff.
Go ahead and plug in any websites, anything that you care to promote, or even add anything else, advice, or anything else with that.
I'm on Instagram, of course, Kelley Baker, and and some of that other stuff. But if people would just go to my website, angryfilmmaker.com, you can read blog posts. I've got stuff posted up there. I've just made a whole series of little, and I call them promotional films, from my short stories and my books, pieces of my books. And what we did is we shot them in various places around town. I had my son-in-law shoot for me, and a buddy of mine, Real Sound. And I'm in these various places reading, but then I'm cutting outrageous footage of all this stuff. So at one point, I know none of you even remember the name, but I was on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1956. Now, sure, I was 3 months old, and I was reading from a book that I didn't write until a year ago. I had Ed Sullivan introduce me. A little bit of trickery there. The audience is all in black. I'm in black and white. One of the readings, I'm supposedly in a beatnik bar in the 1960s, where everybody's smoking cigarettes and snapping their fingers, and here I am reading from my books. I've got one coming out in about probably next week. A little known fact, I was the opening act at Woodstock 2 days before the festival actually opened. So you'll see me reading outdoors and the whole Woodstock crowd going crazy. And at one point they even chant my name. I can do that because, I'm a sound designer. The object of these things is to let people hear my stories and to have fun with these pieces. Yes, I was 13 years old when Woodstock happened, so I was nowhere near the place. This is my creative way, I guess, of promoting my work. Yeah, but it's a way to have fun with what we do. My website is, that's central to everything I do. And I always tell people, if you want to buy a book, if you want to buy a t-shirt, a coffee mug, whatever it is, I would appreciate it, because that helps me, create. That helps me pay my bills. That helps me, we're independent artists. I have nobody behind me, no trust fund, no, a little bit of money in the bank, but certainly not much. I'm a working class guy, and always have been, kind of situation. And I think more and more filmmakers and writers and artists, they have to be open to these kinds of things. Gone are the days when you make a film and you send it off to the distributor and they give you a ton of money. If those days ever existed, we have to figure out ways to get our work out there. And I love, talking about and supporting other filmmakers, other writers, and putting their stuff up on, my various social media stuff. Because, once again, we're all in it together, no matter what kind of stuff that other people do. My genre might not be for everybody, but, that doesn't mean I can't promote a horror film or a book or whatever you might want to call it. It's, boy, support all independent artists. That's really where I stand. Support all independent artists.
And there you have it, everybody. That is author filmmaker Kelley Baker.
Thank you, man. This has been so cool. It's like I've been enjoying being on your show, dude.